Welcome everybody. Happy Saturday. We've had a really fun week, frankly. There's been a lot of stuff in the news that we're going to talk about a little bit today. Obviously, we're looking forward to media days that are starting in the SEC, and we're in that fun little transitionary period where we are now kind of officially starting to cover way more SEC stuff and looking back on the Big 12. And people may ask, you're like, why would you want to look back? You can only look forward. The way I equate it is it's like a person you used to date, right? You want to check in on them every now and again, maybe follow them on Instagram, set up some Google alerts, hide in the shrubbery outside of their house, just something to make sure that they're doing well, right? And that's what we're doing today. So I want to start, guys, with one of our favorite coaches, or at least my favorite coach, and that's Mr. Mike Gundy. Mike is famous for his proclamations, letting everybody know who he is, where he is, what he cares about. He's at one point was very into his gender.
I'm a man. I'm 40.
And his age. And now he's, expanding that into his consumption habits. So what I wanted to do is lots of people have talked about Mike's ability to, drink drive thousands of times. Now, he's since recanted that and just said that he's made thousands of bad decisions. And who amongst us hasn't? We've seen his haircut. So what we want to do now is try to equate. Is there an analog? Is there another Mike Gundy-esque type person? And I think it would be fair to expand this beyond just personality traits into maybe scheme, how they run their team, because Mike is potentially, I don't know how you feel about this, but he's certainly in consideration for the Coaching Hall of Fame. He's right now the second longest tenured coach at his program. So if you had to guess just off the top of your head, and we'll start with you, Ian, because I know how excited you are about this subject. What coach could you equate in the SEC that is most similar to Mike Gundy?
Easy.
How about we start with Eric?
Lane Kiffin.
Oh, it's Lane Kiffin. I know this is such a slow pitch.
Mike Gundy, that guy. He's always trying to take the heat off his players. That's what he's doing. That's what he was doing there.
Yep.
He doesn't mind the attention on him. Again, references haircut, the tan. He doesn't care about the attention.
Nope.
He says crazy things. He's not like Mike Leach, where Mike Leach was a little more endearing, where this guy's a little more prickly. But I find him amusing. He says stupid stuff. It doesn't bother me really. I mean, I know it bothers a lot of people, but I care about more about actions than words. And he won me over a long time ago with his ability to win with a bunch of guys rated 85, as opposed to Texas with a bunch of guys rated 90 and 92. Terrific schemer, does more with less. So maybe he's not Lane Kiffin. It's time for Lane Kiffin to prove that he's Mike Gundy.
Well, let's look at that a second. Let's look at Mike Gundy's record. Overall in the Big 12, he's 95-12, 12-6 in bowls. Now against top 10 opponents, he is 5-14. And like I said before, the second longest tenured coach at his program. Against Texas, he is 9-13. So, I mean, when you look at these, he's a great coach.
Hold on. How's he 95-12 and then 9-13 against Texas? Are you talking about
What's that?
Are you taking Texas out of that number?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So beyond that, all right. So 95-12, that doesn't sound right because it seems like he has 12 losses to OU.
Right.
Either way, he's really good.
Do you have any thoughts on this, Paul? I know how passionate you are about.
Are you right? Is he writing 2 TTFs for the Big 12 fans?
Yes, I am. I'm going to sell dozens. I'm going to go on Big 12 sites and trumpet my. I'll say, obviously we're not in the league anymore, but obviously we still know more than you do as Texas fans. We're still your superiors. So buy my book. It'd be great. Yeah, I'm just waiting on a couple of things, and I'll be able to publish soon.
I hear you.
Just waiting on a couple of things.
All right.
There's always a couple of things. Well, let's.
The best part about the Mike Gundy comment that didn't get as much scrutiny. By the way, as a Gen Xer, what Mike Gundy said was honest, if politically incorrect. Right? We had a major cultural shift in this country about that, and it's a good thing. Then we also have the technological apparatus that there's no excuse to ever do it anymore, right? Take an Uber, take a Lyft. But the best was, what are you going to do to punish Ollie Gordon And he said, I'll make him carry it 50 times in his first game. So great. Because, I mean, the media, look, if you're sports media, no offense, Joe Cook, but if you're true like media and a journalism degree, you're so tired of reporting on like who has a groin strain. And when you get like a real story, like real journal, I'm going to do real journalisming. You want to go in there and be very pious and solemn. And what are you doing to punish Ollie Gordon? And Mike Gundy's like, I'm making him carry it 50 times. That'll lower his draft stock. It'll take some tread off his tire. It'll cost him $100,000 probably in contract money.
Yeah.
I just think that's hilarious. Do they play North Dakota State or South Dakota State in their opener?
I think it's
one of them.
State.
It's the bad one. It's the bad one now, the South Dakota State. The one that's
neither's bad. I know they lost a bunch.
No, I mean the one you don't want to play.
Yeah.
Like South Dakota State's becoming the one you don't want to play.
That game will actually be more competitive than people think. And Ollie Gordon might get his 50 carry. He might get a Deontay Foreman versus Kansas Charlie Strong game. Do you remember that game? So part of that game is Deontay carried it 56 times or whatever that was. But he fumbled 3 or 4 times just out of exhaustion because he was just so tired carrying the ball. Yeah, I just love the idea of punishing the player by making him take extra reps in a game. I just love that.
Yeah, giving them more playing time. It's antithetical to the way it's generally handled.
That's right.
What's also funny about that is that it immediately flipped things back around. So like instead of people wanting to which I guess speaks to what Eric was saying about Gundy, instead of everybody being to be like, Ollie Gordon did this atrocious thing and how severe is the punishment going to be? And then he says that punishment and people are like, you can't do that. That's inhuman, you know?
Well, but again, it's like, it's arguably a reward.
Coach, I'm a person.
Like, we're going to give you as many touches as we can.
I'm not running 34 counter again. I'm a human being.
Oh, geez.
So, as Paul said, we're doing some journalism. What is we talked a little bit about the connection between the SEC and the Big 12, just in terms of what are the similarities? And Paul, not to speak out of turn here, but was of the opinion that everybody pretty much is playing the same type of football right now. Now, do you still hold to that?
Well, now that I realize that some of the teams that were playing Big 12 style defenses don't run them anymore, I guess not at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking more on the offense. You used to have a real difference between SEC and Big 12 offenses in terms of expansiveness of scheme, trying new stuff, being on the bleeding edge of trying new things, the veer and shoot, the air raid, all that stuff. That's all infiltrated the SEC. And in fact, the SEC is probably more offensively adventurous now than the Big 12. So that's kind of an odd shift. But, you knew it was going to happen. Jeff Lebby is going to be running the veer and shoot at Mississippi State. Obviously, Josh Heupel really revived Tennessee. So, guys, I don't know if you fully realize this, especially if you're a little older, but, I mean, Tennessee used to be a national power.
Oh, yeah.
And in the 90s, they would have multiple double-digit win seasons back-to-back. I was doing research for my preview, and Heupel's 27-14 there, his first 3 years. Before him, they were sub 500. They had won double-digit games 3 times since 2004. That was a dead program. You think Texas was wandering in the woods for a while? Holy cow, Tennessee has just been, awful. And Heupel came in, put in the Big 12iest of all Big 12 offenses, right? And he's had tremendous success with it. And this year, he's got this prototype quarterback that if you drew up in a lab to run that offense, that's the guy. Nico is 6'6", massive arm. I was watching some Tennessee spring game. It's going to be unbelievable just watching that guy uncork 60-yard throws every fourth play. It's going to be crazy.
We've got these, adventurous offenses, and obviously when I think of adventure, I think of Ian Boyd. What are some of the things that you're noticing, Ian, moving into the SEC? And because Paul posed another question about who we should root for, but I'm curious, is there a particular style you're excited to see, or is it truly pretty much similar all the way around?
I think it's going to be fun to watch Sark get more into the McDaniels RPO stuff in the SEC. In the Big 12, everybody was playing the 3 deep flyover defenses, just drop everyone back, unconventional strategy. And so Sark had to like write all these new pages to his playbook on how to play teams like that. And now he can get back to kind of more of the stuff that he was known for, like at Alabama, or some of the stuff he's been incorporating in the last couple of years. Because the SEC has a lot more defenses that'll actually try to play you straight up in man coverage or in conventional stuff. And so I think a lot more of Sark's modern conventional playbook will come into effect. And that stuff to me, I think will be fun to watch. I like watching those Big 12 defenses against not Texas on offense, like they're fun to watch when it's not stymieing something else that I want to see. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on how Texas handles, playing NFL cornerbacks or NFL defensive linemen on a more weekly basis. I think we're all kind of still watching for that. I think the fears about that have been calmed in the last couple of years by how Texas has played, but that's still something that I'm going to be interested to watch for. I don't know if I'm excited about watching for it, but it'll definitely be interesting.
Paul, you mentioned prior to us going live, the idea of, every season there's generally an opponent or maybe someone else in the league that you end up rooting for, because their success will invariably help you as you progress through the season. Obviously, last year that was Alabama. Us beating Alabama early in the season, we wanted Alabama to do well to further solidify the quality of that win. Next season, who do you think that's going to be? Can you speculate on that? Or do you have any ideas at this moment?
Yeah, I think it's going to be Alabama again. It's wild. So, as you guys know, the SEC now has an asymmetrical schedule. Not everybody, it's not a round robin. It's of course they've scrapped the divisions, the old SEC East, SEC West, which is not going to be good news for some of the old SEC East teams. But there's very different levels of scheduling in the SEC, as Florida will attest on one end, and then as A&M will attest on the other end. They kind of got a great setup. So one of the things we're going to be incentivized to do is Missouri is one of those teams with a really easy schedule in the SEC, and they play Alabama. Alabama also hosts Georgia, which could be an important game for us. And they also play LSU, they play Tennessee, and they play Oklahoma. So those are all games that are relevant. And so I think Alabama has enough weaknesses that they're going to drop a couple, but I think they're good enough that would anyone be shocked if Kalen DeBoer put together an amazing game plan and beat Georgia in Tuscaloosa?
No.
I mean, no. So I think those games could be really important for us, and we may want to be sort of casual Alabama fans, just like we were last year. Because if a Missouri, if an A&M, if even LSU goes on a heater and they win a couple of big games, the rest of their SEC schedule is very easy. And they could supplant a superior SEC team for a SEC game title berth. So it's kind of incumbent. We'll see how the season unfolds. We may be rooting against Alabama if they're undefeated in SEC play late in the season. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. We're going to have a bunch of teams that could go 7-1, 6-2. Ole Miss, of course, is another example of that. Super favorable schedule, and then they completely remade their team in the portal. So it's going to be interesting permutations, and Texas will only have opportunities to put losses on direct adversaries that are really super relevant, only really in the Georgia game, when we host them in Austin. So winning that game will take on extra importance for Texas.
I want to thank Brett for throwing in a super chat, and it's a great question that I want to throw to all the boys. But let's focus on this one right now because we're on the subject of the league and who we might be rooting for. And this is a way too early prediction, but I would just like to go around. We'll start with you, Eric. So if UGA has 2 losses, conference games, obviously if we beat them, that would be certainly account for 1. But who would you rather play? Would you rather play Bama, LSU, and then UGA again? Who would you rather play?
Is he talking about in the conference championship?
I think it's the conference championship game.
Yeah, I think it'd be hilarious if Texas played Georgia 3 times. I like good football. I like playing good teams. Just give me Georgia every time. I'm always going to take the tougher team, just because I think it makes your team better. It would be fun to play LSU just because they've got all the different recruiting storylines right now. I'm tired of seeing Kalen DeBoer versus Steve Sarkisian, frankly. But if they're the best team, I want to see that as well. But yeah, give me Georgia as many times as possible. It's a great storyline. It's a kind of a one of a kind season. If they could play them 3 times, it means Texas had a really good season. Somehow, even if they dropped all 3 games, it would mean Texas had a good season. Kind of crazy.
Ian, attack this guy.
Do you share his?
No. Play them as few times as possible. Get the championship.
Ian's a vag.
Hang the banners. Buy the DVD.
Actually, Brett's thinking like me here. That's kind of what I'm going at here. Is if you can just opportunistically put 2 losses on a superior team like Georgia, that's a good thing, right? And who'd we rather play? We would rather play LSU. I just kind of completed. They're not on our schedule, so I did a more cursory write-up of LSU and previewing them. Their defense is not going to be fixed, guys.
Yeah.
People are freaking out.
About Davis. That solves all the problems.
Yeah, apparently, but yeah, people are freaking out about Jaden Daniels and all that. LSU's going to be fine on offense. It's their defense. They're going to be starting a true freshman, at least one at corner. They've got issues all over the secondary, and the defensive line just doesn't have any dudes. So that is the team we'd rather play because they're actually a team that we could bully. And that's who we'd like to go after. So that would be fun to see Bo Davis on the opposite sideline and just run inside zone and duo 25 consecutive times and beat LSU.
LSU, real quick, Jeff G saying you wanted to see Washington first last year. I did not want to see Washington in the playoffs last year. As soon as that happened, I was like, this is not the team that Texas wanted to get. And we saw how that turned out. So
moving over to Brett Nelson again, totally funding this show with his super chat. If you have a super chat, please throw that in there. That guarantees that it will be asked, no matter how stupid the question is. This is actually a fun question. So this is a true or false. We'll go around the table here, and we'll start with the first. True or false, Eric? Quinn's season is a disappointment if he's not in New York City for the Heisman.
Yeah, this is more of a Paul question. Paul absolutely loves the Heisman Trophy. No. Quinn's season is a disappointment if he gets hurt, misses some games, throws too many picks, that sort of thing. I'm with Paul, not really caring about the Heisman all that much. Lead a good team into the playoffs, make a deep run, and then Quinn will probably have a good season. I'm not too worried about the Heisman Trophy.
Paul, Eric has answered for you. Are you happy with that answer?
I am. That is the correct answer. Yeah, I would disagree on this one. I mean, look, obviously we want him to have a big statistical year. If he missed a couple of games from injury, that alone could keep you from becoming a finalist, right?
Right.
And, I think we feel confident that Arch would be just fine in that situation. The other factor is you can't control what other people do. Carson Beck is going to have a huge year. Shedeur Sanders is going to have all the hype. If Colorado goes 7-5, people are going to try to get them in the playoff. There's a bunch of other players out there, and they're going to put up big statistics. Jackson Dart, as much as I think he's a product of the system, and Kiffin does a good job with him, he's going to put up huge numbers. So, he could certainly be there. So I don't think it's the end of the world. And to answer you, Brett, in the chat, yes, I think the Heisman is vastly overrated. I think it's kind of been sullied. All you need to know about the Heisman is that Jim Brown finished 4th And in the same year, Paul Hornung won it on a 2-8 Notre Dame football team. And by 2-8, I mean 2 wins, 8 losses. That's your Heisman right there for you.
Over to you, Ian. True or false? I mean, I think we seem to be in agreement here.
His legacy at Texas is not going to be what he wanted or what his recruiting hype indicated if he's never a New York finalist for the Heisman Trophy. That is absolutely going to be a stain on his legacy. For Texas and Texas fans, we don't necessarily care. It's the outcome of the season. But for Ewers, that's not going to be great. Like that, there's no way that's how he wanted his career to go, right? Even if he has a high draft ranking and does well in the NFL. Like Jim Brown, sure, if Quinn Ewers goes to the NFL and has a legendary NFL career, people will look back and be like, well, he wasn't in the Heisman finalist, but obviously Quinn Ewers is a legend. It's ridiculous that he didn't finish higher. But that's only because
Ian,
that's only because that career happened.
Who were the 3 invited to New York last year?
I don't know, but I can tell you,
Daniel, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix. You know who wasn't there? Marvin Harrison Jr., Carson Beck, Rome Odunze. Like, did they have good years?
I'm not saying that the Heisman is a marker of a good season or not. I'm saying it's a legacy builder. It puts you out in front of everyone in a major way. I don't care about the Heisman that much either. I'm with you guys in that it does not reward the right things, but it is absolutely a mark of cultural impact and cultural relevance.
VY wasn't even good enough to win it, so I don't think we should expect Quinn to even be there.
But Colt and Vince were finalists. And if Quinn Ewers is not even a finalist, like let's say that he wanted to go down on the Rushmore of Texas quarterbacks. If he's not a finalist for the Heisman this year, that probably means he has no prayer of being on Texas quarterback Rushmore, right?
So if we win the national title, but he's not a Heisman finalist, that's a stain upon his legacy?
If we win the national championship and Quinn and it's not with Arch, then he'll be fine.
It's not with Arch.
That's a fair point.
But these, again, it's like the Jim Brown comparison. Like, yes, if all these other major factors go his way, then he'll overcome not being a finalist because he missed 3 games with injury or whatever. But it's not a good indicator. At the very least, you have to admit, it's not a good indicator for Quinn and his overall legacy as some kind of legend who had the perfect recruiting score out of high school in South Lake Carroll if he's not a finalist for the Heisman.
What about question number 2, Elsie?
Yeah, so I think this speaks to one of the stains and fun attributes of being a Texas supporter, and that is sometimes some unrealistic expectations. And now we're meeting some that we might actually have some realistic expectations this year in terms of quality of play. And the question that Brett is asking is, will Texas's regular season be a disappointment if they are not in Atlanta for the SEC title game? And I think, this is one of those things that is really going to rely on a lot of what other teams do as well. This could be a close race in the top to get to that particular game. But I'm curious to see what you guys think. What marks a disappointment? Now, bear in mind, it should be said that Texas could not make the SEC championship and very easily be in the playoff. But what we're looking at here is specifically the SEC championship game. Is it a disappointment if Texas doesn't make it to that final game in Atlanta? And I'll start with you, Paul.
I mean, it would likely be a bummer in the most likely scenarios, except this, just like we talked about earlier, you have an opportunity for multiple SEC teams to be tied at 7-1 at the conclusion of the season who didn't play each other. So then you go to tiebreakers, and I don't even know what that is. It's a Byzantine system, I'm sure. So you could theoretically have an 11-1 Texas that doesn't qualify for the SEC title game because they dropped a game to an SEC opponent and they lost out on some Byzantine tiebreaker. Guess what? That Texas team is a 5 seed in the playoff, right?
Yep.
And probably has a good setup. They're going to drill Liberty. Then they're going to play the Big 12 title winner. Oh no, Utah. and they're going to be set up, probably in pretty good position. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to have to all shift our mindsets as fans, me included, that the hay's not in the barn until the end of the season. I mean, no one in the NFL, other than seeding, which is relevant for college as well, no one in the NFL is like, oh God, we didn't win the division, but we're in the wild card. Woe is me. I'm not watching us the rest of the season. If you're alive, you're alive. You could still win the national title. And we're going to have, at some point, a non-conference winner win the national title. And it's going to freak everybody out. But, we've kind of had interesting things like that before. Remember 2021? Alabama pretty much drills Georgia in the SEC title game. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yep.
Then they meet again in the playoff. Alabama, a little bit depleted at wide receiver. Georgia, I think, just also played better. And they whip Alabama and they win the national title. So Alabama, SEC champions 2021. Georgia, national champions 2021. You prefer the Georgia championship over the Bama one.
Ian, we'll go to you. I mean, do you feel, obviously this is a more emotional question than it is empirical, as Paul has pointed out. I mean, we don't have to make it to Atlanta to have a successful season, but will there be an air of disappointment if we don't?
Beat Oklahoma, make the playoffs. Don't embarrass yourself on the biggest stage. Good.
You feel the same way, Eric?
Yeah, I thought Ian was going to call it a Mesopotamian system to counter Paul's Byzantine. I thought we were going to get deep in the weeds on history here. Yeah, I feel the same way, man. Just getting the play. It would be a little disappointing just because Texas going into the season is first or second best team in the on paper, anyways. So it would be a little disappointing from that standpoint. But getting the playoffs, I need to know the context of why they didn't make it. If they're 7-1 and there's some weird loophole was why they missed it, then you don't care as much. But just getting the playoffs and it's kind of it's gonna the more teams you have, the more it's gonna be like baseball, where you can have some team kind of come out of nowhere. The Astros absolutely drilled the Rangers last year, and then the Rangers come in and beat them in their own house and win the World Series. We're gonna have some weird scenarios like that. Just get in the playoffs, man.
Yeah, I think that, as Paul pointed out, the emotional roller coaster that fans go through, where if you might lose one game, that's the end of your season, is gone by the wayside. So it really does change the perspective a lot. I want to get to Cotton's question. He has a super chat, but I wanted to first, before we do that, go ahead and thank Luxe. Oh, that's Laura. Hey, Laura, how you doing? I want to thank Luxe. So Luxe is a kitchen and bath remodel company that is offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels. They've been doing it for over 3 generations. They have an all-star team of also full home remodelers for large additions, even commercial build-outs as well. So please, they've been a great supporter of us, and we want to support them as much as we can. So if you've got a remodel coming up, kitchen, bath, or even an extension for your home, please give them a call. Their number is 833-358-LUXE. That's 833-358-LUXE. And you can meet them at Luxe, L-U-X, kitchenbath.com. Again, thank them so much for working with us. We really do appreciate them. And before we move on here, well, you know what? Let's move on, because I think this is a fun question. This is a sartorical question. Cotton has a question about our cleats. Do you think we're ever going to go back to the all blacks? Do you guys see that happening? And frankly, do you care? Let's go with that first. Ian is saying no. Ian does not care about his fits. Eric, do you have any concern about your game day looks?
No, I mean, I got to look clean. Don't get me wrong. But no, I don't care what I don't care. All it takes is one cultural impact person. What if what's her name? Taylor Swift puts what's his name? Kelsey in black cleats for a day. Then you'll probably see high school kids all over. Or Odell Beckham. One year I went to a high school combine, and every single kid at the combine had Odell Beckham's haircut. So all it takes is that one person, that guy that crosses cultural boundaries, and maybe you will see black cleats again. But I don't think it's just going to come back naturally.
What kind of cleats your kid got, Paul? I mean, what's he rocking in tackle football?
I think they're white.
White?
Yeah, actually, I like the pure white cleats on a quarterback, like Reno Hightower in Best of Times and Kurt Russell. when he puts on the white cleats and comes out and he's like smoking a Marlboro Red. Quinn Ewers could pull that off if he'll
well,
grow
it's
back
certainly
the
in his
mullet.
mullet days.
Just
Absolutely.
a long ashy Marlboro Red. He's got pure white cleats and he just grounds out the cigarette. He's like, "We're winning today, boys." I think that's the move. I don't get too into the fashion aspect of it, but I do appreciate that people are into it. How's that for a political answer?
Staying on Quinn here, let's talk a little bit about these. I mean, we have a sample size in last year and how this works, but do we need to worry about potential chemistry issues with Ewers and the new wide receivers? I mean, obviously he had new wide receivers last year and it seemed to work pretty well for him. Do we have any concern about that moving forward? I mean, I think on a baseline level, there's always a level of concern for chemistry, but I do think with this particular system and the way that and the experience that Ewers has in it, that will be mitigated. What are your thoughts on that, Ian?
Not terribly worried. Like he did so well with Adonai Mitchell last year in one offseason. I think the only concern would be if they have so many guys that are rotating at receiver in the offseason, whether he's getting enough reps with the guys that end up being the go-to players. But I'm not super worried about it. I think Quinn will be working pretty hard this offseason to make sure he gets the throws and the time he needs. And the way Sark does his practices too maximizes quarterback reps, and like they have like 7-on-7 type drills in practice, and they have like a 4-on-3 type deals where they can get everybody throwing and running routes at the same time. So this doesn't seem like something that Sark is going to allow to be a problem.
You get thoughts on this, Eric?
I think chemistry is formed when wide receivers know how to get open and the quarterback knows how to find them. You get enough successful reps, and all of a sudden you have chemistry. So I have faith in the receivers getting open, and I have faith in third-year Quinn Ewers knowing how to find them. I don't think it's going to be a big concern.
Paul?
No, I don't have any concerns.
Let's talk a little bit. We talked a little bit about this, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are. This is another way of framing a similar question that we had earlier. Do you think it's tougher to win an SEC championship or win in a 12-team playoff?
Depends on your schedule. If you're Florida, it's going to be very tough to win the SEC championship. If you have one of those easier schedules, it's going to be a lot. Obviously, it's going to be a lot easier. So I think it depends on the schedule. In general, that's a question that would make me think. If everybody had the same schedule, I don't know. That's if Alabama's on the uptick, like it appears they're going to be, have sustainable success. Georgia's not going anywhere. Texas isn't going anywhere. It might be tough to win the Big 12. I mean the SEC.
It's okay. Right. Sometimes we don't know who our vice president is. It's fine. And we all make mistakes on what league we're in. Don't worry about it. All right. Anything to counter that, boys?
No, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
it's all schedule dependent. I mean, again,
let's move a little bit to recruiting, and just because I think this has come up quite a bit, and obviously we've been focused on defensive tackle and all that that's going on. But how much now, Eric, are you noticing just in terms of recruiting? Are players looking at the trajectory of the team? I mean, because it seems right now, the question that Jeff is asking is when the LSUD looks awful, do the defensive tackle prospects focus more on the opportunity to play, or will they notice the trending of the program? Where are the kids? Where are their heads at now?
Well, see, LSU is such an outlier because, Bo Davis was at Texas. He built these relationships with these kids while he was at Texas. He was selling them on Texas, and then he goes to LSU, his alma mater, and now he's selling them just as hard. If they cared about opportunity as much, they'd be looking at Texas. Texas is going to lose 5 defensive tackles this year, maybe 5. I guess they could. Somebody could come back for a 10th year. So, I mean, if opportunity was the key, I think Texas would already have a couple of horses in the barn. But, they are going to struggle. Texas is going to have to keep building relationships with a guy like Zion Williams. They're not going to get Brandon Brown back, but they could potentially flip a guy like Zion Williams. Step one is getting him to use that official visit in the fall. Not too worried about defensive tackle unless they miss on DJ Sanders, and then I don't really know what to think. So, we'll see. Long way to go on that one.
So Texas, we're going to go to Michael M here because this is a question I think. And I'll put this to you first, Paul. So, what are the chances the game at College Station is a must win for us. And again, we should equate when that falls into the schedule. And is it one of those things that people should be over worried about? I mean, this is a traditional game. I mean, we think about the Red River rivalry game. I mean, anything can happen in that one, and we're reestablishing this home and home with A&M. I feel like this is also a situation where anything could happen. But this being the last regular season game, does this become a must win for us, or is it too early to tell?
It's going to be a must win game. Yeah, I mean, it's a must win game if we are 6-5 and they're 5-6 coming into the game. I think that there's a lot of stuff on the line there in terms of recruiting, in terms of rivalry, being able to own your office that week, etc. But I think the more likely thing is they're going to be most likely our second toughest SEC game because of the location and the opponent, Georgia being number one. And then probably our third hardest game overall in the season. Depends on Michigan. Can Alex Orji throw a spiral? We're not sure. So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, I think it's going to be a big game. And again, not to get back to the schedule, point to the sign, but there's 16 SEC teams. They're not all playing each other. And I've sat and I've done all the games. I've predicted them all. I've done the math for my preseason preview. And there's going to be multiple teams that are 7-1 or 6-2, or, there might be one 8-0 team. And then everyone else is 7-1, 6-2, and they're all vying for that second berth. Texas can't afford to drop SEC games because right now Vegas says that we're going to lose to Georgia, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, you've got to win all of your other SEC games. Or if we beat Georgia, odds are, just playing out the pure odds, we'll probably get upset by someone else in the SEC. We can't drop any of them against SEC opponents.
Sticking with the schedule, Shadow Bearded asks the question, Texas went 1-2 last year against 10-win teams. Do we have a preseason prediction for their record against 10-win teams? And again, this is total speculation because it depends on the other teams that we're playing against. But as you just stated, Paul, there's a high likelihood of some 7-1 parity in the league. So we'll go back to you, Paul, and then I'd like to hear from Ian on this.
So we're going to play a bunch of 9-win teams more than likely. We might only play Georgia. I mean, Georgia's the only team in the SEC that I'll tell you right now they're going to win 10 games. They're going to go 10-2 at minimum. Can A&M make it? No, I don't think so. They could win 10 games. Unlikely. Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold better be like Johnny Manziel, right? Michigan, they could win 10 games. The more I study them, the more I look at them, boy, unless they can find a quarterback, I just think that they're going to be in peril against a few teams that they shouldn't be in peril against. So I think we might only play one 10-win team in the regular season. And then if things go well, we'd play a 10-win team in the SEC title game and then obviously in the playoffs. So I wouldn't even venture a guess. I have no idea what our record will be. You can win a national title if you go 2-1 against top 10 teams. Maybe
going 1-2.
Yeah, maybe going 1-2 against 10-win teams. So yeah, it's interesting.
Again, this moves a little less back to recruiting, and I want to make sure we don't miss this super chat by Roaster here. So again, let's go this true or false, and we'll start with you, Eric. Do you think Texas finished with a top 5 recruiting class?
I'll say true, just because I think the fall is going to be wild. I think NIL's not nearly in the dire situation as a lot of people do. I think Texas is being a little responsible right now, maybe a little too austere for some. I know everybody wants the Fed to make the printer go burr, but Texas isn't there right now. I think it's going to be a little more. I think they're going to spend a little bit more and get a little bit more aggressive in the fall. I'll go with true, but it could be 6. And to his second question, I mean, come on, man. If they finish 6 and their rating is normally a top 5 class, and it's just a good class that fills all the needs. They hit defensive tackle. They got a 5-star wide receiver or 2. They hold on to KJ Lacey. I mean, come on, that's a good class, dude. It doesn't matter. What matters is what happens on the field.
This is a question for Paul and Ian. What would be your projected starting secondary lineup for 2025? Sorry, yeah, it's asking for 2025.
Oh,
2025.
2025. Cole, Muhammad at corner, Gilbo at slot, and maybe still Taft, and then Derek Williams. Maybe McDonald supplants Taft, but I think every year that guy's going to be a factor. Taft is. It's going to be hard to get him out of there. So
one former Texas coach said Taft's the guy you try to replace every year, and then he just keeps beating out the guy that you bring in.
Yeah.
That's what has proven to be true.
If there's a guy, that's a good one, Ian. If there's a guy that you should keep your eyes on, it's Jelani McDonald. He could really upset the best laid plans of mice and men in 2025. He's a freak. And so now, could he keep eating and end up as like an outside linebacker and, 225-pound blitzing and coverage monster, like our version of Derek Brooks? That would be incredible. But I think he's a safety now. I think they decided that, right? Gilbo, I'm not 100% sure on. I think there's a chance for one of these young freshman corners to supplant that. Would you be crazy to think, Ian, that maybe Cole ends up at nickel and then someone like a Kobe Black starts at corner?
Could be. I mean, we haven't seen him inside there just yet. Eric, who's running behind Gilbo at star right now? Do you know?
It would be Makuba or Taft. Probably Makuba first. Remember, they lost Austin Jordan, who had he's a good, solid player, going to start at TCU. So once he left, it opened it up. But it would be Makuba would be number 3, and he's obviously going to be gone after this year. I think Kobe Black is probably the most likely to go to star. Except then it becomes how fast can he process, and then you're bringing in the mental attributes that make it harder to project with a young player.
Yeah, that's the reason I said Cole, because Cole's just, if you watch him, he's really smart. Like, he's got a high field IQ, and he just feels like a guy that would adjust the speed of the game in there. But yeah, I can say this. I think our talent 2025, 2026 is about to take a major upgrade. So
this is a question that if you can, as quickly as you can, Eric, dispel, because currently Oregon and Phil Knight are living rent-free in a lot of the heads of the fan base. And the question is why don't we have a Phil Knight? Why don't we have a billionaire that's just throwing at all this money? Where's our T-bone Pickens?
Man, I tell you what, I'll hear about some new donor influence. And I'm like, who the hell is that guy? And I go Google him. He's worth $1 billion. I'm like, some guys I've never even heard of. There are billionaires in Austin that hang out at the facilities that have no interest in UT, but just because now they're in Austin, they want to be part of the local fabric, donate to the school. So I mean, there's just there's a lot of billionaires, but it just takes one. I was talking to a former Texas coach years ago before NIL truly broke out, and I said, everybody said this is going to separate the top from the bottom. I said it gives a chance for the bottom to have a chance. And this coach came back with a pretty funny quip. Yeah, the guy that invented the cone water cup at the water cooler, if he goes to Texas State, excuse me, could end up elevating them through NIL. And so, we haven't really seen that yet, but that's exactly what Oregon do. And Oregon is not one of the haves. Everybody's, kind of been misguided by the last decade or so. They're not one of the haves. It just appears that way because of Nike and because of Phil Knight. That could happen at other schools. But Texas money issues are way overblown right now. They don't really have any money issues. They're just being a little austere, like I said.
Well, that's great. I think it's one of those things that it's going to be a worry because, and this is going back to Brett. Now, he didn't pay for this question, so I'm reluctant to ask it. But he wants to know, do you think? And again, we're trying to get into the mind of Sark here. And this is probably more to do with the fans' mind. But this particular year, it seems like it's more obvious that NIL is playing a major factor in some of our recruiting losses. How do you think Sark? Do you think Sark was unprepared for this?
I love that Texas fans are like, I'm not sure about this NIL thing, even though it basically built Texas. They go from 5-7 to 12-2. And not just through NIL of poaching other player, not poaching, but getting players out of the portal, but retainment. I mean, the NIL's been huge for Texas, so I'm all aboard the NIL train. I do think that Sark might have thought that he made it a little more transactional before he had, everybody talked about the Saban discount. Michigan had a discount with Jim Harbaugh. Texas isn't there. But I'm not sure he overestimated that, but I don't think it's really a Sark thing. And I don't think it's internal. I think it's external, and Oregon going way above, DeCorian Moore is probably the most highly paid college athlete outside of a quarterback. It's probably it. Unless one of those gals has some crazy deals. Everybody talks about Livy Dunn. I'm not sure I could pull her out of a lineup, but I think DeCorian Moore is probably the most highly paid player in college football outside of a quarterback. And Texas isn't going to blow up their roster management that way.
You could pick her up out of a lineup. I want to thank you guys.
If she's the only blonde, I could. If it's
right.
Blonde, I would be on the struggle bus.
I want to thank you all for joining us. This has been our Saturday Roundtable. It gives us the opportunity to answer your questions, talk about some of the themes of the week. This is normally our pregame show, so we invite you to check us out every Saturday. We only got 7 more Saturdays to go, and then we are going to get after it. But before we leave, I just want to remind everybody,
I'm a man. I'm 40.